Welcome to the Physician Wealth Med podcast. It's wealth medicine for doctors. If you're a doctor and you have no time, it looks like you found us just in time. This podcast is for all doctors who would like to work on their personal wealth, but do not have traditional hours to do so because they have no time. We're here to jump into topics that will help you address your wealth both inside and outside of your practice so that you can live the life of significance you're dreaming of. You'll hear from your peers, you'll hear from industry professionals, and your host and wealth advisor, me, Kevin Sullivan. This is your time. Now let's get started with today's podcast. Welcome to another show of Physician Wealth Med's podcast. We're so excited today to bring you a very special guest, Dr. Vicki Rackner, with us here today. So welcome, Vicki.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We like to say that this podcast is wealth medicine for doctors because it is created for doctors. It's listened to by doctors. We bring your peer group in to share episodes and some content. We have industry professionals, and we also have myself, Kevin Sullivan, the host of this podcast, come in and give you some insights too as well. But we usually say it's wealth medicine for doctors, but today we're going to talk about a very good topic that is on everybody's mind is physician burnout. We're going to give you some burnout medicine here today. So hopefully this will give you a little hope if you're facing burnout, if you're heading towards burnout, if you're already there. We just want to make sure that we're giving you some content on how to address that. It's just staggering the amount of doctors that are facing burnout right now. So we want to talk about it. So this is Dr. Vicki Rackner. Been so privileged listening to you and your expertise and your passion for what you do for these doctors. She was a breast surgeon when she was in private practice. Give you a little bit about her. She's on the clinical faculty of the University of Washington School of Medicine and a serial entrepreneur where you have to get up and go. She's a keynote speaker at local, regional, and national meetings across the country. She's appeared on over 100 radio shows, including NPR. But the nice thing about it is she's just released version 2 of your book. She's an author. The first book was The Myth of the Rich Doctor. The second book was 9 Money Mistakes Doctors Make. And the third one is How Doctors Can Build True Wealth. So welcome, Dr. Vicki Rackner. So good to have you with us today.
It's a delight to be with you, Kevin.
Thank you so much. This is a topic that seems to, when you read the Medscape articles or surveys and you go through things, you're going, my goodness, is it really happening? Is it really that bad? And some of the top professions that you would think of burnout is just staggering what doctors face these days. So how can you cut through that? How can you work through that? And what are the signs and the recognition on all of that? So introduce yourself and maybe you could just give us an opener on this whole topic from here.
Burnout is a topic very dear to my heart. I have been there myself. If you are finding yourself burned out right now, you are having a human experience. It's completely understandable how and why you are burned out. But here's the great news. You don't have to stay there. There are a lot of things that you can do. Kevin, you just mentioned my book, my upcoming book about true wealth. And I think about true wealth and burnout as opposite sides of the same coin.
Right.
So in burnout, you get what it is that you want. Your life is determined by your values. You have some agency. You have control over your life. On the other side of the coin, people who are burned out think and feel, I don't got this. What's being demanded of me is beyond my reserves. I just don't have it. But the great news is that there are some very easy things that you can do to switch to that other side of the coin, to switch to true wealth instead.
That's a good message of hope. If we're going to talk about this subject that's daunting, we got to give them some hope as far as how to deal with it, how to recognize it. I know, especially on a wealth podcast like this, is one of the things that could just be daunting is not knowing where you stand financially, not knowing where you're at. In today's world, no one should ever have to wonder if they're there, if they're on track for whatever financial goal that they have. So your book is very timely coming out for sure.
I think that I know that doctors who are burned out, the number one thing that they think will make a difference in their life is more money. They see it as a money problem. If they have more money, their life will be better. And I definitely do agree that their money plays an important role in burnout, but not quite in the way that we think. So I'm always collecting doctors' stories. I personally volunteer to coach doctors who are burned out. And there is a free coaching service that's available to any doctor anonymously. We don't like the idea that doctors are actually ending their lives because of burnout. That shouldn't happen. And we're here to help make sure it doesn't happen. So I collect stories, and there are definitely things that successful, fulfilled doctors are doing and thinking today that separate those doctors who are burned out.
Yeah. And if they could pick up any of those traits too and work them into their own lives, what do you think is it like a work balance thing, life balance? Is it finding something as a diversion to maybe give them something to look forward to after they get out of the office? Or are they tunnel vision? Where do you think that all begins to start having things close in where they start to feel that burnout?
So I am going to use a brain model to give you my sense about what happens. So we have very ancient neural circuits in our brain. Homo sapiens have been around for about 300,000 years. And the number one job of the brain is to keep us safe. And so we've got a finely tuned amygdala, a danger detector. And when any information comes into our brain that there is danger out there, it sets up the cascade of physiologic changes that results in the fight freeze response, the danger response, whatever you want to call it. And what I believe is that especially with COVID, our amygdalas are going off. And it happens for a number of reasons. The social isolation, the fact that we were not connected to other people. I know for physicians, it's been different, but there were a lot of physicians working at home. Our ancient brain, our primordial brain, sees isolation as dangerous. It's if somebody was alone, they would die. A lot of physicians face financial scarcity. And in the ancient brain, that's like being chased by the saber-toothed tiger. So I think that many doctors are mounting a completely understandable response to these changing circumstances. Another circumstance that's changing is the corporatization of healthcare. I was speaking with a farmer, and she said that she married a man who's now the third generation of farmers, and it's getting harder to support yourself as a farmer. And so what her neighbor decided to do was sell to a corporate conglomerate. And, you know, that farmer had been taking good care of the land. They got a relationship with the land, right? You need to take care of the land to thrive. They took out all of the rotation, the things that farmers do to invest in the long-term health. And instead they planted a monocrop of corn, because that was going to be what is most profitable. And if we take a look at healthcare, the doctor-patient relationship is like the farmer's relationship with the land. And with corporatization, the value of that relationship is completely removed. It's all about profits today. And if we take a look at the leadership in healthcare, it's harder to make money in healthcare these days. We're seeing conglomerates formed, and only about 15% of the leaders in healthcare organizations actually have taken care of patients. And so there is this focus on profits. More and more physicians are feeling like commodities. And so the thing that used to nurture us, the doctor-patient relationship, is not valued in the same way. And that's a profound change in our circumstances. No wonder doctors are unhappy.
Yes. It's so true, especially if they only have 15 minutes with you, when they can only come in and address things because of the time crunch, and then the medical records on top of that. It could be, and maybe even politics in the workplace from the administration. That can all add to it, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Okay, but here is my contrarian belief, Kevin. It's not our circumstances that create our feelings and our actions. It's our thoughts about our circumstances that really make the radical difference. And if there is one thing that people can do to turn around burnout, it is understanding that their brain's going to offer thoughts all the time. Not all of these thoughts are true. And sometimes just one swap of a thought can totally turn things around. So let me tell you a real life story. I got a coaching call from a woman who held a leadership position in her organization. So she was a department head.
Yeah.
And she was just completely burned out. She wanted to talk with me about whether she should quit, maybe whether she should leave medicine in general. So I asked her to tell me a little more. And she said, here I am, the department chair, and all of my employees have completely valid problems, and I cannot solve any of them. So what good am I? And I asked her, you mean a good leader is a person who should be able to solve these problems? She said, absolutely. I said, you're a doctor, you solve patients' problems. What happens if you got a patient with a terminal illness? Do you feel like a bad doctor then? She said, no, of course not. I feel like a great doctor. That is really my chance to be there for somebody in a time of need and really offer comfort and support. And I said, what if you brought that thought in to your leadership position? What if a leader is somebody who is there even when there are not obvious solutions? So she implemented this thing that we came up with on the call called Lunch with Dr. Laura. And she would invite one employee to bring their lunch into her office. They would sit down at the table together and just have lunch. And she could just ask people, how are you doing? What's working for you? What's not working? And her brain would want to tell her, you need to solve these problems. That's your job. But then she got the substitute job. My job is to be here, to be a witness to my employee's life. And she was surprised that her employees actually did have ideas about how things could be better, which she then implemented. But this was hugely successful. You know, other employees came in and, when can I have my lunch with Dr. Laura? And she completely transformed her life from being burned out, wanting to quit, to like really enjoy going to work and helping other departments reproduce the kinds of results that she was having.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly why we have Dr. Vicki Rackner on our program today. That is so powerful. Just a change of thought, maybe a change of mission, because she probably thought, okay, could I ever get to that point? But when she starts doing that, now everybody wants to have lunch with Dr. Laura. Huge.
Right. And remember, if she is thinking, I can't solve the problem, that's actually a dangerous situation, right?
Right.
If you don't have a solution, that can be dangerous. And that sets off the amygdala, which sets off the fight, flight, freeze response. And of course, when we're there, we don't have access to our prefrontal cortex where the solutions are found. So it's a double whammy. And just by substituting one thought, you can completely unravel that.
That is so huge. So if a doctor finds themselves going down that road, your advice to them would be what? Just to try to get that other thought going at the same time?
First, they have to suspend disbelief, because when I say it's not your circumstances that are creating your feelings, it's your thoughts about the circumstances that create your feelings. I know that's a big gap. But if somebody would just be willing to suspend disbelief, they can go through a simple exercise. They can just in the morning write down their thoughts. Just write down the thoughts that are going through your head, so they're out. And now you can actually take a look at them, and you can ask yourself, which of this is true? Like, you might think, if my partner just picked up the towels, then my life would be better and our marriage would be fixed. Is that really true?
Yeah.
If only I could have more than 15 minutes with a patient, my life would be better. Is that true? That's based on the thought that what you can accomplish has to be done in 15 minutes. Is there a way you can get more time if you needed to? Is there a way that you could use those 15 minutes a little differently? So you don't have to feel like you're a victim to your circumstances. You have thoughts about your circumstances, and those thoughts create feelings, and those feelings create action. Let me give you another example.
That's good.
One of the things that I get really upset about is the extinction of species. You know, what's going on in this planet. And like, when I think about that, I just feel like so overwhelmed. What do you do with that? And it's easy to see how somebody could get burned out. They feel like there's nothing that I could do. I can't control this. This is something important to me. But I don't know why, but this summer I got inspired to raise monarch butterflies. So the monarch butterflies are near extinction. I'd already cultivated milkweed in my garden to attract them to my place. And it turns out that if you just let a monarch butterfly lay an egg on the milkweed, and that egg grows into a caterpillar, a couple of different stages, creates this chrysalis, and then emerges into a butterfly, only a very small percent, like maybe 10% of the eggs actually make it to the butterfly. But if you hand raise them, if you harvest the eggs and put them in a safe place where predators can't get them, and let them get to be the stage of butterflies in a safe place, that number goes up to about 80%. Okay. Wow. So how much can one person do, right? But it was something I could do. And it was so much fun. And it felt so empowering. So a lot of times people who face burnout just look around and say, this problem is just too big. I can't make a difference. Or I'm too small. I don't have what it takes to rise to the challenge. Those are thoughts. And if you think that a problem is too big, you can break it down. You can find your hand-raising monarch butterflies that will work for you. If you think that you don't have the reserve to do it, there might be a good reason. And my guess is that you're spending a lot of time with your danger alarm going off, your amygdala sounding. And there are ways of calming down the amygdala. It may well be that you're traumatized by the experience that you're facing, but there's ways of healing from trauma too. So wherever it is that you're getting stuck, however you are getting stuck, there are things that you can do to turn those elements around.
I love the part where you said, get it out of your head and on paper. I think that's a battle that happens. It just reactively, it's something else, because you think once you get it out on paper, you can see it more objectively than if you just kept it in here. And so maybe that's a first step for a lot of those. And then you can start to rationalize your answers, or is addressing those to say, like you said, is this really true or not? Or am I walking down the wrong road here? That's
right. I think that the biggest mistake that we make as part of our human condition
Mm.
is that there's an objective reality there. Like, I used to testify as an expert witness in court. Like, what could be proven in a court of law?
Mm-hmm.
And then what is our interpretation of those facts? Because the interpretation is your thought. Oftentimes we believe our thoughts as totally true. So if you take a look at that thought, would you be able to prove that in a court of law? My bosses mean, they're always second guessing me. That would be hard to prove. But if you could go with a specific circumstance, my boss said to me, I don't understand why you're taking so long. So everyone can observe that and agree on that. Everything else is interpretation. And oftentimes by changing the interpretation, which is a different thought, right? A thought is just a sentence in your head.
Yeah.
Things look a lot different.
It does. And I've often said this phrase, and I think we could maybe put it into the burnout category, is with every step of faith, the scenery changes, because you can't see it until you step. It's the kids play the video games these days or so, but if they make it to level 1, level 2, level 3, there's a whole different scenery. So as you put that step forward and maybe get it on paper, suddenly the scenery's starting to change. Or if you implement like Dr. Laura in that part, interviewing her employees, her scenery started to change. And then I think that could walk you out of it too, as you start to do these things.
I love that, Kevin. And the interesting thing about thought work is it's like compound interest. Like, over time, you change one thought, and then it makes it easier to change that next thought and the next. And suddenly you're finding that your life is transformed because your thoughts create your feelings, which create your actions. And once you start the change, that momentum helps you get even to that next level, 3, 4, 5.
Right. Yes, that's excellent. This is good. And doctors, as you listen to this, I hope you're really writing some notes down as we go through this, because this is powerful stuff. Sometimes it might seem that's too easy. What would you say to a doctor that says, well, that's too easy to write it down on paper? Would that really work for me? What would you say?
What I would say is, might be right, but we all have blind spots. Yes. And there's a reason that we don't treat ourselves and we don't treat people that we love. And I just invite this person to just give it a try, maybe for the next week or 2. This is a powerful habit, and it will raise your awareness about how you see and interpret the world around you. Absolutely.
What else would you have to offer here?
I want to talk about thoughts about money.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of doctors about their money stories. And after you hear enough stories, you start to wonder, what's the difference between people who build wealth, who have the freedom to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and the people who are struggling, the people who are stuck. And I have laid out 9 mistakes that people who struggle make. I have taken a look at the forces that shape doctors and their relationship with money. But if we are going down the path of the role of money in burnout, I'm going to argue that there are thoughts that are not serving you. And the major thought is that I don't have enough money, therefore I have a money problem that's solved with more money. All right, so there's a bunch of thoughts.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, I'm going to suggest just playing around with these thoughts and see what you think, see what happens. How about if money scarcity is a symptom and the underlying cause, the diagnosis, is your money-related behaviors? And what if you connect the dots between your money-related behaviors your feelings, and your money-related thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So here are some thoughts that can hold people back. Money creates my feeling of security. Money creates my feeling of being valued. Money helps me manage stress. Money doesn't do any of those things.
That is so true.
It's your thought about money that does it. Kevin, I'm sure that you've seen people who have lost fortunes. So what if you change your thought to money has a job, and money's job is making money. And the reason that you make money is that if you have this vision for your life, this vision of true wealth, where you're getting what you want, money helps you live that life in a bigger way. So let's say you had a cause that you were really passionate about. With more money, you could form your own nonprofit and bring that solution into the world. Money has a job, and as you elevate money to this job, your life is elevated too.
Totally agree. Yes. We always use the term, the life of significance that the doctors would like to pursue. Especially, we don't like to use the word retirement with doctors sometimes because it's just a transition to the next mission that you want to be in. And if you do that with your money and create that foundation, create that charitable thing, now you're definitely elevated, just like you said, to a life of significance, which helps burnout, which helps all of these other things.
Yes. The opposite side of the coin, true wealth and burnout, opposite sides of the coin. I think that one of the key transformations that we physicians can make is reinventing our thoughts about money. I remember eating at just a lovely 5-star restaurant in France. And I was with a man, and the menu that I got didn't have any prices on it, even though I was actually the one picking up the tab. And it was like the restaurant was saying, don't you worry your pretty little head about money. Somebody else will take care of it. But if you think about how we practice medicine, do we really know how much it costs when we order that procedure or we take somebody to the operating room? It's especially for boomers like us. You know, we were making decisions irrespective of a patient's ability to pay. That was a strong medical ethic. So we don't pay attention to money, and it's kind of part of our culture. And I think that the single way that many doctors can change the trajectory of their life is to take a look at their relationship with money and reinvent it. You have all sorts of stories about money, what the meaning is, what the purpose is. And if you could just take a look at those thoughts, if you can write down your answers to the thought, the meaning of money is, I believe that money is scarce or abundant. Think about the stories that you originally were told about money. What did your parents teach you about money? And all of those are thoughts, and all of those thoughts can be changed in service to this higher purpose that you were just describing, Kevin.
That is absolutely excellent. And then if you do some charitable things like that too, you get tax deductions that go with it, and you can direct where it's going anyway. So it's got a double effect that way too.
Oh, let me just say right now that most doctors are paying too much in taxes.
Totally.
They are taking their information to a CPA who often takes a look at what happened this past year and says, here's the taxes that you owe. But a tax strategist can proactively do things that can legally and ethically cut your tax bill by hundreds of thousands of dollars. I know an orthopedic surgeon who was working with a tax strategist and cut his bill by $900,000 in a single year. So a lot of the taxes that you pay are optional. And one mistake, that a very costly mistake that doctors make, is not thinking about how can I reduce my taxes.
Mm-hmm. We did a podcast on that, how to navigate taxes with precision, on those very strategies. And you can't cover everything in one podcast, but we introduced some of those concepts to them. So that's been well received too, as well. But any final thoughts that you would have here today before we wrap this up here?
Yeah, I just want to recognize how heroic physicians have been over these past couple of years. Despite our traumatic circumstances, you're out there serving patients. Mm-hmm. And this doesn't have to be at your own expense. There are ways of creating a life that works for you. The 3 kind of dials that you can turn are your thoughts.
Yeah.
You can have different thoughts, the way you manage your time, and the way you manage your money.
We've been listening to Dr. Vicki Rackner. Thank you so much for being our guest today. We're going to make sure that we have the links in the podcast for your books, how to get in touch with you. If you'd like more information on what Vicki does and how she can help, please respond to some of these things and share and subscribe. Share this with other doctors that you might feel that are going through this very thing with physician burnout, because I think they'll find this very useful. This is going to be very well received, I believe, from our doctor community. So I appreciate your time today from Seattle. I'm in New York, right outside of Niagara Falls, Buffalo area. So I just appreciate the technology that allows us to do this. Thank you very much today.
Thank you for the chance to share this information. Hopefully, we're going to help some of your listeners turn around their burnout.
You got it. All right. Thank you so much. That's our podcast for today. And remember, if you're not working on your personal wealth, who is? Please share this podcast with your friends and colleagues, and make sure you subscribe, like, and share. Any questions about what you heard today, please send an email to kdsullivan@lpl.com. Physician Wealth Meds, wealth medicine for doctors. Dr. Vicki Rackner is not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Physician Wealth Meds. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. The opinions in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision.